Hello and welcome to our revision video on Saraswati. So first of all, a general introduction to who Saraswati is, and this could provide some material for those shorter questions in particular. So she is a goddess of knowledge, learning and wisdom, the consort of Brahma, and she's associated with music, speech and creativity. And she's often shown playing a musical instrument that you can see in this image, and so she can act as inspiration to musicians or people using music to show bhakti or devotion. So most of the stories involving Saraswati are from the Puranas, and so we've already told you that she's linked with Brahma, and the stories say that she was created to bring order and knowledge to the universe. So without Saraswati, there is chaos. And she's very much linked with learning and the learning pathway or knowledge pathway in Hinduism, in that she allows humans to understand the world around them, but also to understand scripture. So she plays a really important role, is going to be useful for those exam questions that talk about different ways to Brahman or different ways of achieving moksha. She's also mentioned in the Rig Veda, and she's associated with an ancient river that's no longer thought to exist. So you could use her in a question about rivers. Remember, there's that bit of the spec that talks about land, rivers and animals, and so just like a river is this powerful life-giving force, Saraswati is seen as being similar to what's said about her in the Puranas. She's linked with speech and communication, and so again you could link her with worship and that idea of reciting from scripture or using speech or singing in worship. So how does Saraswati influence Hindus today? So this could be a 4-marker. So you could talk about her influence on education, that often girls' schools in particular are named after her. Students might pray to her during exams, and in some schools during puja or worship they will put things like pens or laptops or exercise books on the puja tray so that they can be blessed. So again, you could use her in a question about puja. So she's got lots of uses. We've already mentioned that she influences musicians, and in particular people using music as part of their worship. And then you can also make a link with, again, the pathway, Jnana Yoga, so the knowledge pathway, and that she inspires believers to study scripture. So I'm going to give you some time to do this as part of your revision. So can you write down one belief about Saraswati? So remember, the key with these is to keep it simple and keep it short. It does not have to be a full sentence. So she is the consort of Brahma. You could just write consort of Brahma. I've given you a second one, associated with learning. So thinking about the slide we looked at previously, pause the video and have a go at this one, or even if you don't write the answer in full, plan what you would write. So explain 2 ways in which a belief in Saraswati influences Hindus today. So have a go at either writing your answer, you want to do that in 4 minutes, or planning your answer. Pause the video whilst you do that. So this is my answer appearing on screen. So one way a belief in Saraswati influences Hindus is it encourages Hindus to value education. And then for my development point, I've put about praying to her for success in exams and the placing of the books or pens in front of a murti of her during puja. You could also include naming schools after her. And then I've spoken about how she inspires creativity and worship using the arts. and so Hindus might express their devotion using music or art to connect with the divine. Remember, you have to be able to write this in 4 minutes. So I've then got on screen for you a 6-mark answer. So these are the ones where you have to include your stories or your quotes. At Heatherset, we try and get you to include a quote in both paragraphs so that if it doesn't work first time, it can work second time, but you don't have to do that. Please don't spend ages in the exam trying to think of a second quote. So you might want to pause the video to read the answer on screen. So you can see in my first paragraph, my source of wisdom has come from the Puranas, and the idea of bringing knowledge to creation. So she helps you understand the world around you. And then my second teaching is from the Rig Veda, and that idea of speech and creativity, and linking that with devotion through music or study of texts. Again, you have to be able to write that in 6 minutes. You do not have to have a quote in both paragraphs, but it can be a way of showing development in both paragraphs. And if your first quote doesn't work, then your second one gives you another chance. Now for 12 marker, I've chosen something linked with Saraswati, but not explicitly naming her. So knowledge is the most important way to achieve moksha. So you might want to pause the video. You might have a go at writing this out in full. You might just produce a plan, and you want to have arguments and counter arguments and a conclusion. So pause the video whilst you do that. So this is my plan, and again, you might want to pause the video and compare what I've got to your answer and perhaps make some improvements. So in my first section, I've concentrated very much on Saraswati and the idea that she's linked with speech and wisdom, and that making that link with Jnana Yoga, the idea of knowledge as a pathway to Brahman and moksha. Then as my counter argument, I've made the point that there are multiple pathways to achieve moksha, and that could include bhakti yoga or devotion. Then in my second paragraph, I want to show a really good knowledge of Hinduism. I want to show that I'm making explicit references to religion to get into band 3 or 4. And so now I've spoken about knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita, so that Krishna teaches Arjuna, and that helps him achieve moksha. But also in the Ramayana, when Sita is exiled with her sons, she makes sure that they receive an education. Using those two stories enables me to make a really nice evaluation point that in both of the big epics of Hinduism, there is an emphasis on knowledge to achieve moksha, or that knowledge is important or essential. That kind of evaluation point is going to help me get into band 4. Then as my counter argument, very similar to previous, I've said, but there are multiple ways to achieve moksha, and this time I've contrasted it with karma yoga. So it isn't enough to know what to do, you've actually got to do it. So you have to do good actions. And then in my conclusion, and this is a style of conclusion we use quite a lot in Hinduism, I've said that while Saraswati and Krishna, I could have said Sita as well, show that knowledge is an important path, Hinduism has multiple valid paths to moksha, and therefore knowledge is not the most important for all Hindus, and devotion and action may be more suitable for some Hindus. Remember, in my conclusion, I want to explicitly use the wording from the statement. And so I might finish that off by saying, therefore, knowledge is an important way to achieve moksha, but not the most important way for all Hindus. I hope that was useful. Thank you very much.